Hi guys, welcome to Andy Skills Digital Photography. My name is Femi Mano, and today I'll be teaching you on how DSLR camera works and their techniques. Now, DSLR cameras are built to offer high-defined and quality images at cheap and affordable prices with many features and photo modes to enhance photographs. All these are things we have discussed in our last lessons when we talked about introduction to DSLR cameras. Many settings are featured in DSLR cameras. Some are auto and some are to be set manually by the user. One of the basic settings your DSLR camera offers is the ability to achieve bright, clear and pin-sharp images with the use of the right exposure calculations. We'll be talking about the exposure triangle which gives us good exposure calculation. Now, exposure, this is the brightness or darkness of an image. It sounds very easy to take an image that is correctly exposed, that is having the proper brightness or darkness, but the reality is very tricky. Exposure is made up of three components, as I said earlier: aperture, shutter speed and ISO. These three are interdependent, and changing any one of the three will affect the exposure. Taking a good look at this diagram, we have the aperture at one side, the shutter speed at one side, and the ISO at the other side, all coming together to give us the exposure triangle, which gives us a perfect exposure calculation. Now, aperture. Aperture is the depth of the field level. It is expressed in f numbers. It is the hole within your lens through which light travels into the camera body. A small f-stop means larger aperture, while large f-stop is vice versa. Now, what is depth of field? The size of the aperture has a direct impact on the depth of field, which is the part of the image that appears sharp. A large f number, such as f32, which means a smaller aperture, will bring all foregrounds and backgrounds objects in focus. That means all the foregrounds and background objects in that picture will be sharp, while an aperture like f1.4 will isolate the foreground from the background by making the foreground object sharp and the background blurry. Now, we're going to take a look at this diagram. We have f1.4, f2, f2.8, f4, f5.6, f8, f11, f16, f22, f32. All these f numbers are aperture, and that is how you represent an aperture. Now, taking a good look at this picture, at f.4 we have the object being isolated from the background. That is, the background is very blurry. Now, f2, the background is coming up a little bit but still blurry. f2.8 still blurry. f4 coming up gradually till we got to f22. Now look at the picture. We have f22 and f32. You can see the background and the foreground are both in focus. They are very sharp. So this is the effect of the f numbers, and you need to understand how aperture works with the depth of field level. Now, to the second part of the exposure triangle, ISO. ISO is the level of your camera sensitivity to available light. The lower the ISO number, the less sensitive it is to the light. While a higher ISO number increases the sensitivity of your camera, high ISO numbers also result in digital noise. Now we're going to take a look at this picture. Now we have ISO 50, we have ISO 100, ISO 200, ISO 400 to ISO 25,600. Now look at ISO 50. We have the pictures bright, looking good with no noise. As you can see, ISO 800, we're having some noise around it, some noise on the picture. ISO 1600, more noise. ISO 3200, more noise. Now take a good look at ISO 25,600. We have a lot of noise on the picture, and this is actually taking the beauty of the picture itself away. Now this is to tell you that the amount of ISO you give to your camera, the amount of ISO your camera is set to, would depend on how much light will enter to the lens and how much noise your picture would have. So alright, now to the shutter speed. The shutter speed, which is the third component that makes up the exposure triangle. Now, the shutter speed is also known as exposure time. It implies the length of time a camera shutter is open to expose light into the camera sensor. If the shutter speed is fast, it can help to freeze action completely. If the shutter speed is low, it can create an effect called motion blur, when moving objects appears blurred along the direction of the motion. Now, taking a good look at this diagram, we have the 1,000th of a second shutter speed, giving us a very pin sharp picture, while the half of a second of the shutter speed is giving us a very motion blurred image. So when you set your camera, what this implies, when you set your camera to 1,000 of a second, or you set it around 125, 250 or 500, you have a very sharp picture, you have a very sharp image. And the moment you start moving down, you start taking your shutter speed down to the 30th, the 15th, or the 1/8 of a second, you are going to have a motion blurred picture, a motion blurred image. So now that is it about shutter speed. And whenever you, another thing to take note of is, whenever you increase your shutter speed to around 125, 250, because your shutter speed is fast, you are going to have light passing through the lens, the sensor, the camera sensor fastly. So that means you won't have enough light, or you're going to have a sharp picture, or you won't have enough light because you have increased the shutter. But whenever you come down to 130, 115, 1/8 of a second, you are going to have enough light passing through the camera sensor, because you have reduced the speed at which the shutter speed is being used, or the speed at which the shutter speed works. So you have enough light passing through the camera sensor, but this could lead to a motion blurred result. So now, exposure compensation. Now we've treated exposure triangle, we've treated everything about exposure triangle. We will still do the practicals and take a look at how these things come up together to make up the exposure triangle. After you have done all the settings, you've tweaked all the settings the exposure triangle offers, the shutter speed, the ISO, and the aperture. Another thing to have in mind is the exposure compensation. The exposure compensation is a very powerful exposure tool which helps to compensate all the exposure settings you have done with the exposure triangle. The exposure compensation comes in positives and negatives. Now this means whenever you add to your exposure compensation, when you go +1, +2, +3, +4, that means you are adding more light to your exposure, to your settings. You are adding more light. And whenever you come down to -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, that means you are reducing the amount of light your camera is receiving. So that means the exposure compensation is just to compensate all the settings you add in your exposure triangle. That means the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO. You are trying to compensate the settings you've done there and trying to strike a balance between the two. So now we are moving to the modes at which the camera works. Now earlier we said the DSLR camera either comes in auto or manual settings, which can be done by the user, him or herself. So the auto mode, this is the most important, maligned and overlooked camera mode. In auto, your camera does pretty much everything but point itself. That means you have to be the one to point the camera to where you want the pictures to come from. Now, so your camera decides what is best related to exposure based on where your camera is pointing to and the amount of light your camera sensor picks up. Now, it selects the shutter speed, aperture, and ISO itself. You point your camera, click the shutter button, and move on. So the auto button is a very easy settings for you to use, or a very easy mode for you to use as a starter. So this helps you to understand your camera, in the sense that your camera does pretty much everything for you. All you just have to do is just point your camera to where you want to shoot, and the camera does all the settings, the exposure compensation, everything. The camera does everything for you. All you just have to do is just to press the shutter button and move on. Now to manual modes. In this camera setting mode, you do every bit of the settings yourself as a user. Now you decide what is best for your image, that is, select the shutter speed yourself, select the aperture yourself, and select or set the ISO yourself too. You point your camera, click the shutter button, and move on. So when it comes to the manual mode, as the name implies, that means you have to do pretty much everything yourself. You have to be the one to set the shutter speed to whatever you want. You have to be the one to set the aperture to whatever you want, and you have to be the one to do the settings of the ISO and the exposure compensation, whatever is going to make your picture look good. The zooming, everything, the focusing, you have to be the one to do it yourself, and the camera is not going to help you. So that is all about the modes. Another type of mode is the aperture priority mode. Now, the aperture priority mode on some cameras, it's either represented as A or AV. Now, this mode is great for times when you want to have a nice depth of field with separation between the subject of your photo and the background. These settings allows you to set a specific aperture value, that is f number. When you say aperture value, you would remember I said our aperture value is always represented in f numbers. So now, while the camera selects a shutter speed to match it, that will result in proper exposure based on lighting condition as measured by the camera's light meter. We are not going to use a light meter, but what we are saying is the camera itself has a light meter which measures the amount of light that enters into the camera sensor. Now, it is often used to allow the photographer to control the focus of the object in the frame. It also finds use in portrait photography when a wide aperture identified by a low number, that is identified by a low number. When we say an aperture is wide, it means you are having a low number, a low value of aperture, like f1.4, f2.8. you are having a low wide aperture. So these are smaller depth of field. This smaller depth of field may be desired to throw back background out of focus and make it less distracting. Now to the shutter priority mode. It is represented as S or SB depending on the kind of camera you are using. So now, this mode allows you to set the camera's shutter speed and camera adjust aperture to ensure correct exposure itself. Now, mostly used when capturing things in motion, a bike running, that is a bike running, people dancing, a moving train, sports, and whatever thing that is moving. It could even be a person walking fast or walking towards you. All you just have to do is just to use the shutter priority mode. So you have the camera adjust the aperture itself and you just set the camera shutter speed. So that is that about the modes. We have the auto, we have the manual, we have the aperture priority, and we have the shutter priority mode. Now we're moving to the lenses and how they affect the techniques at which DSLR camera works. Now, lenses, also called glass, can either be fixed permanently or interchangeable. Now, interchangeable lenses are then classified into different types, but the two major ones are fixed, also known as prime lenses or zoom lenses. Now, while zoom lenses allow zooming in and out without having to move closer or away from the subject, fixed or prime lenses only have a focal length, therefore prompt moving closer and moving away from the subject to achieve desired image results. What are we trying to say? Zoom lenses allows you to move to stand at the spot and zoom in and zoom out images, bring them closer to you or take them farther away from you just at the spot. While fixed lenses, the prime lenses, as said, doesn't work like that. You have to either move closer to your subject or you move farther away from the subject manually without having any lens to help you. You just have to move closer to the object yourself or you move away from the subject by yourself. So now, light passes through them and image processing starts from here. Every lens has a limit on how small the aperture can get. If you take a look at the specifications of your lens, it shows what maximum lowest f number and minimum highest f number your lens have. Now, the maximum aperture of the lens is much more important than the minimum because it shows the speed of the lens. A lens that has an aperture of f1.2 or f1.4 as the minimum aperture is considered to be a fast lens because it can pass through more light than, for example, a lens with a maximum aperture of 4.0. Now, that is why lenses with larger aperture are better suited for low light photography. What do we mean? We mean low light photography in the sense that probably you're shooting a concert, you're shooting a runaway fashion program, a lot of programs, concerts, just programs that you don't have enough light to aid your picture. So when you have lenses with large aperture, when we say large aperture, like when you come down to f1.2, f1.4, you have a lens with large aperture. They allow more light to enter through the lens. So when you have this, you are good enough, you are good to go for low light conditions photography. Taking a good look at this picture. With this picture, I think we will be able to further understand what an aperture is and how aperture works. You know, the other picture I showed you talked about how the foreground and the background becomes blurred or whatever. Now here we have another example of how the aperture works. Now f32, the aperture we have, the f value we have here is f32. As you can see, the foreground and the background itself, they are appearing very sharp and they are in focus. Now f22 still the same, f16 is still coming up, it's still good, f11 is still good. But when you look at f2.8, f2 and f1.4, you can see that the background appears very blurry and the object is very sharp. As you can also see in this diagram, we have under the f32 to around f8, f5.6, we have more closed deep depth of field. That is, there is a deep depth of field. The background appears very sharp. But when you move to around f4, f2.8, f2, f1.4, that is called more open, and it has a shallow depth of field. That is, the background becomes blurry.